Welcome to our podcast. We have a special guest today, Professor Tuzinski. He was born in Poland. He graduated with an MSc in theoretical physics, summa cum laude. He obtained his PhD in condensed matter physics in 1983 from the University of Calgary, Canada. From 1983 to 1988, he was a faculty member at the Department of Physics of the Memorial University of Newfoundland. He moved to the University of Alberta in 1988. Since 1993, he has been a full professor in the Department of Physics. Between 2005 and 2020, he held the prestigious Allard Chair in Experimental Oncology at the Cross Cancer Institute. He has too many accolades to mention. He has published more than 600 journals, papers, which is extraordinary, and 12 books. He received over 100 research grants from Canadian, US, and European funding agencies. He's on the editorial board of 30 international journals. He was a founding member of three spin-off companies. So that's a really impressive resume. I've never seen someone so prolific in terms of publication. 600 publication is quite a feat. I don't think many people have 600 publications, so congratulations. So perhaps you can just give us a little bit of background. I know you started as a physicist, how you got into, how your career has developed and ended up looking at these medical issues, in this case, sarcopenia.
Well, it's been an interesting adventure. I call it the random walks on science. I've been doing all kinds of research, starting with mainstream physics, and then I actually spent some time developing, honing my mathematical skills, doing nonlinear dynamics. And when you talk about nonlinear phenomena, living systems are a great example of systems which are nonlinear dynamically. And that led me to understand a little bit more biology, and I ventured into biophysics. In fact, I came back from sabbatical in Düsseldorf, Germany, and I told my chair that I'm now switching from physics to biophysics. And he said, it's your problem, not mine. And and so that started a different direction in my research. I was very interested in particular in protein biophysics and polymerization. And that led me to some very important proteins for living cells, tubulin, actin, motor proteins, all of which participate in very important processes, including cell division. So there are two major directions that really guided me in terms of what I was interested in. The first one was cell mitosis, cell division, and these kinds of processes which are driven by energy. And so that leads to cancer, and maybe we'll talk about this. Eventually positioned me to be able to apply for endowed chair in oncology, which I won and spent 15 years in the Department of Oncology at the Cross Cancer Institute. So that's the first direction. The second direction is actually still fascinating and much more, I would say, challenging to some degree, namely neuroscience and how these proteins play a role in cognitive processes, in particular in consciousness. And so that's kind of a divergent pathway. One is cell division, and as you know, neurons don't divide. So we have non-dividing cells, dividing cells, and the dividing cells, if they can't stop, they don't want to stop dividing. That leads to neoplasia and pathologies and cancers and these kinds of things. Both of these, by the way, the cell division and information processing in the brain strongly depend on energy production and energy delivery and energy consumption efficiencies, these kinds of things, which of course have also an implication on human physiology. So this is how I ended up trying to understand the fundamental nature of these processes, and including Some of it, which is still at the moment, I would say, frontier science, things like quantum biology, and even quantum medicine, which is maybe emerging as a future direction in understanding the human body. So I don't know if you noticed, but I recently published a book with Deepak Chopra and Brian Fertig. The book is called Quantum Body, and in this book we discuss integration and synchronization of biological processes in human physiology. So this is kind of the background to it. And in the meantime, I spent 15 years at the Cross Cancer Institute. My mission was to set up a group of scientists, basic scientists, to develop computational methods for drug discovery, especially for chemotherapy. So I've done that, and we have one compound as a result of it in the clinical trials right now. There are some other ones in earlier stages of development, but we've also used these computational methods to design potential therapeutics for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's neurodegenerative diseases, as well as for virology. One comment, being a physicist is, in a way, it's a big blessing because you're able to be agnostic regarding the field of medical application. So we use the same methods or similar methods, whether it be neurology or virology or cardiology. So the mathematical toolbox and the computational toolbox prepares us to be very general in this. Unlike medical doctors like yourself who are specializing in one field, and I collaborated on this book with two medical doctors. Deepak Chopra is a medical doctor, and so is Brian Fertig is a practicing clinician with a specialization in endocrinology, in diabetes, insulin resistance. Okay, that's my background.
That's really fascinating. Anyway, today we're going to talk about your recent paper. It's fresh off the press, January 2025, Reversing Decline in Aging Muscles, Expected Trends, Impact, and Remedies. So, my interest at the moment is longevity and health. I think the topic that you've reviewed is very timely. It was said by Dr. Frank Lipman that muscle mass is the key to longevity. Muscle mass or skeletal muscle has a lot of functions. I'm going to run through these quickly as I put up the list. Maintaining posture and body position, supporting and protecting internal organs. There's a role in controlling body temperature, stabilizing joints, release of myokines. There are effects on fat, liver, brain, immune system, bones, metabolic regulation, um, and glycogen storage, glucose disposal. It's a reservoir for amino acids, and also, as I mentioned, there is an effect on the brain and with effects on brain health. So I think it's a very important topic. The problem with having sarcopenia is it has a lot of negative effects. So fractures, disability, poor quality of life, nursing home admissions, urinary incontinence. There is the osteosarcopenic obesity syndrome. As we age, our bodies naturally lose bone and muscle mass while gaining fat. So this leads to the osteosarcopenic obesity syndrome. Of course, you're going to get impaired physical performance, premature mortality, and risk of injury. So anyway, I really enjoyed your paper. It's very well written, has 119 references. So tell us about your paper, and you've said that it gives us a framework for understanding and addressing age-related physical decline through
Yeah.
evidence-based intervention. So over to
So
you.
so I would like to sort of take a broad approach to this topic because it encompasses a lot of, you mentioned longevity and aging affects a lot of aspects. And So we came up with Dr. Fertig, by the way, we came up with easy to remember phrase or slogan that actually includes physical strength and muscle mass as part of it, but it's a broader aspect. And this phrase is a quintet of quintets. So to answer your question, how to overcome the effects of aging, including loss of muscle mass, it's not just exercise, which is obvious, but the quintet of quintets, so five areas of special attention that we must be paying in terms of lifestyle. And these five areas are, number one is stress. And that includes broadly, financial, psychological stress and professional stress, and that's, by the way, very individual, right? So for some people, something may be very stressful. For some others, actually could be vitalizing, such as, um, let's say, public speaking. For some people, is one of the most stressful situations you can find yourself, right? For others, it's quite the opposite. They thrive.
Yeah.
So you have to look individual at all of these things. But there are some, major groups of situations. So stress is number one, and number two is sleep. And sleep has major implications for metabolism, and including physical condition, also affects stress. So these things are interconnected to some degree. And the third one is diet. Gaining weight doesn't help because, as we naturally lose the muscle mass just by aging, by the aging process. And this, by the way, the muscle. So going back to my early interests in the cytoskeleton, of course, muscles are acting as a result of the actin myosin contractile fibers, and they are all fed by ATP molecules. ATP is the molecule, the energy. We call it quantum of energy
Right.
because you have one ATP molecule per one step in every process in living cells. And that includes muscle contraction, that includes cell division, that includes transcription, translation of DNA, everything. Every little step consumes one molecule of ATP. And every day, we actually have a turnover of ADP from ADP, which is low energy molecule, to ATP, which is high energy molecule, equal to the mass of our body. And of course, we talk about 2,000 calories or something like this. That's exactly when you do the conversion. It turns out that's the amount of ATP.
Mm.
That is, yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
interesting in its own right.
Hmm.
And as a physicist, sorry, I'm deviating a little bit. We will come back to the quintet of quintets in a minute, but
Right.
I wanted to say this because that's very important for the muscle contraction and the muscle mass.
Mm.
So obviously, we need to have the caloric intake for our muscles to function properly,
Mm.
right? And that means, roughly speaking, 2,000 calories, and and that is the production of ATP. Interestingly, just a little, when you do the conversion, again, as a physicist, I like these things. 2,000 calories per day, 24 hours, corresponds to 100 watts of power. It's amazing when you think about this. Our complicated body, the human body, is so
Oh, yeah.
complex. It has
Yes.
so many systems, organs, and tissues, and consumes only. So that's not a lot. So we are super efficient as a machine
Right.
from this mechanical point of view. And 25% of that, by the way, which will lead us to the next aspect of the quintet. So the 25% of that, which is 25 watts, is consumed by the brain. The brain and the kidneys are the hardest working organs in terms of energy consumption. So one, of course, is cognitive abilities and this central nervous system, basically navigating all the actions of the human body by the brain. So 25%, and only about 2% of the body mass is the brain, and 25% of the energy consumption. That's tenfold, overconsumption compared to the rest of the body. So let's once again, stress, sleep, diet. We need to have that. That includes microbiota, by the way, which is now very hot,
Yeah.
as you know, because it's not just how much you eat. We need to have the 2,000 calories, but what you eat, and so the quality, because we have so much in a healthy organism, we have so much bacteria in our gastrointestinal system, which help with the digestion, help with the proper functioning of the GI tract. And then, of course, exercise. So exercise, and this is the key aspect of maintaining muscle. Of course, we tend to be less active with age, but on the other hand, if you are too active and you forget that you are, let's say, now 60 instead of 25, this could be quite dangerous. And you mentioned fractures, injuries. So I think that calls for some kind of moderation, although probably most of the people don't exercise enough rather than too much. But exercising too much may not be actually beneficial. So that's kind of a sweet spot that we're seeking. And the last aspect, which is probably by medical professionals like yourself, not mentioned too much, but it's very important for our mental health. And that also leads to activity, and whether it be walking or biking or playing some team sports, is social activities, social involvement. So these are the five aspects of overall health. Abstracting from, let's say, any pharmacological intervention. This is just lifestyle: stress, sleep, diet, exercise, social involvement, and all of it is mutual interacting, right? So if you're social in connected, you're also by nature more active physically, because you have to go and meet somebody. You can go to the park, go for a walk with your friends, and so on.
Yeah.
Diet, of course. Diet, you can go for dinner with friends, so that's where you can have proper diet if you go for a nice healthy meal rather than fast food and so on. So these are the five areas of activity, but then within each of these there is five properties, and this is very important. When you read some self-help books, this is never mentioned or discussed, and I really want to stress it. So now we have five properties. The first property is how much. So the quantity of stress, which, and we'll come back to this in a minute, the quantity of sleep, 7 hours or 8 hours. Again, too little is not good, and too much is also not good, because you may actually develop depression, or it's actually correlated. Quantity and then quality. You
Right.
may sleep 8 hours, but it's interrupted, you
Yes.
know, or is maybe in an environment which is not conducive to deep sleep, restful sleep. Then the quality, or diet, the same thing, right?
Right.
You may have enough calories, but poor content in terms of micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, um, etc. Exercise, the same thing, quality and quantity. So sweet spot. And it's not every type of exercise may be good for everybody. So, things like maybe aerobic less, but more active or dynamic walking, or in the park, or biking, at your pace. So quantity, quality, that's easy to remember. And then there are three properties of time, which are incredibly important. That is, when. When do you do this? Matters. So when do you sleep? And so if you have, let's say, 8 hours of sleep every day, but it's not very well coordinated, and every day you have a different time at which you go to bed, that's not good. So your organism is desynchronized. So you have to be synchronized. Typically, you should be synchronized with the hours of the day. So when you exercise, again, when you eat, this is kind of a bit controversial, and I think probably also geography specific. As you probably know, in different parts of the world, people eat at different times. So we have covered the five quintets of activities, and now we have talked about three aspects of the quintet of property. So quantity, quality, and then when. And the second is how often. So how often do you exercise, right? How often is it? Is it once a week or every day? Is it, yeah, so that's important. Chronic stress is the worst. Doesn't have to be very high intensity, but if it's chronic, you never have time to relax, to unwind, and to restore your body.
Hmm.
from the effects of stress. That's worse than intense stress, but once in a while.
Yeah.
So how often and then for how long? That's the fifth aspect. So once again, quantity, quality, when, how often, and for how long. And again, that all of this is to some degree personalized and individual. So I don't want to be, pontificating too much, but I think these are the major aspects. What we call a quintet of quintets, easy to remember. And if we try to adopt these practices to our daily routine, then this would help everybody.
Excellent. Yeah, I was noticing you were talking about lifestyle. Interestingly, a lot of people think they've got to have good genetics, but genetics only accounts for 20 to 30% of longevity. And the Blue Zone project, which a lot of people might
Mhm.
know about, there were nine factors identified in centenarians. They moved naturally. So, as you said, they were moving around. They didn't spend a lot of time sitting. They sat on the floor and stood up. So, yes, functional exercises, purpose, having a sense of purpose is important.
Yes.
Um, Stress management. The 80% rule is that you only eat until you're 80% full. So I tell my patients, slow down, check in with yourself. Have you had enough? When you've had enough, stop, not when you're full.
Hmm.
So plant-based diet, wine at 5. I think that's probably not a good idea. Well, the main thing about wine, red wine, is that it has resveratrol in it. Now you can just take a tablet. You can take a tablet, which is equivalent to, several bottles of wine. And
Hmm.
it's been shown that there's really no safe dose of alcohol. It still has detrimental effects, particularly sleep. You don't get good quality sleep if you drink
Yes.
alcohol.
Yes.
Um, they they belong to some faith-based community. All but five of the 263 centurions had a
Hmm.
faith-based community. Loved ones first and the right tribe. The world's longest lived people chose or were born into social circles that supported healthy behaviors. And
Yes.
then there's also the Life's Essential Eight, put out by the American Heart Association. Very similar. They've added cholesterol control, managing high blood pressure, and managing cholesterol, glucose, and blood pressure. So yes, so lifestyle is very important. The question of how much should we exercise and what should we do? I mean, there's so much written about that. There was an interesting book published recently by John Jackwish, and he really recommends resistance training. So very easy to do. Elastic bands, tension bands. They're cheap. You can do it, and it's the variable resistance. So as you move, the resistance gets more. There's a lot of interest on resistance training.
So that's directly speaking to the muscle strength,
Yeah,
retaining muscle strength, I guess, or building up. Let me just make one comment about what you just said about the diet and wine and all that stuff, because I spend a lot of time in Italy, and that's a quintessential Mediterranean diet
yeah,
situation, right? And the food is fantastic, no doubt about it, and it's high quality. They don't have any genetically modified components.
right.
It's all, locally sourced most of the time. So that's another thing about the diet that they have. And olive oil, a lot of plants, fresh fruit, vegetables. But wine is part of the culture. And so paradoxically, Italy that spends very little compared to the US on healthcare has better outcomes overall. Italy is one of the best countries, not only for lifespan, but also for health span.
Right.
And you mentioned something which I think is probably the answer. I didn't really study this at length, but I think you have an answer to that, which probably when people say Mediterranean diet, that's magic. No, no, I think in the case of Italy, at least, and maybe some other countries, maybe Spain, I don't know with Spain that much, but in Italy, they have a very close-knit family life. So you have this active family life, also close-knit groups of friends, and it's kind of hierarchical. It's circles of interactions. You have the family, core family, then you have extended family, they have friends, then you have the local community, uh, and then you have the region. And before you say you're Italian, you say, I'm from Lazio, I'm from Piemonte, I'm from Lombardia. So regional.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to tell you that these are very strongly connected communities. And I think that's maybe part of their longevity and the purpose-filled life, in
Yeah.
spite of their quite often, much lower level of remuneration and even unemployment. But they do have strong family connections and
Yeah.
social connections.
Yeah.
And you can quite often see people, uh, you know, elderly people sitting at a table in a cafe outside playing cards and
Yeah.
meeting every day with the same group of friends. That makes a difference.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So the quality of food in the United States, I'm sure it's the food in Canada is better. They say it's been estimated that 80% of what we eat in America is ultra processed. Um, once the, you know, it's once the food is going into processing, there's sugar, chemicals, preservatives, and I kind of think of it as, it's really now just chemicals that are put together to look and taste like food. But I mean, ultra processed. I mean, and the added sugar. We don't need added sugar
No.
in our diet, but they put it everywhere. That's making us fat. 70% of Americans are overweight or obese.
And
Despite, yeah,
it's addictive also, right? The food
it's
you eat
addictive. Yes,
is very
yes,
addictive. So you said a few minutes ago 80% full. So if you're addictive, you overeat, not 80%, but 120%, right? You eat be, uh, beyond satiation.
yeah, exactly. And then you need, I mean, protein, and it's something that I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but the recommendations now for protein intake is 1 gram per ideal body weight. So if you're 150 pounds, 150 grams of protein,
Uh-huh.
ideal body weight. That's hard to do. Uh,
Yeah,
People don't do that. So I've been trying to bump up my protein intake. I use those shakes, 30 grams,
I
try to
see.
take a couple of those a day. That's
So
six.
you're saying that people are not eating enough protein?
Yes,
Ah, that's interesting.
probably. Yes.
Huh.
So yeah, the old recommendations, I think zero point 0.8 grams per pound was really an underestimate. That's more for just barely maintaining muscle mass. If you want to prevent loss or build muscle, you need 1 gram. What do
Well,
you do in terms of exercise, supplements?
yeah,
How
I
do you
play
keep
tennis.
yourself healthy?
I play tennis a lot, especially when I'm in Italy. I play. I have a coach, a trainer, so I play tennis with him. We have a lot of snow. I shovel the snow a lot,
Yeah,
so that's my winter exercise. And in the summer, I also have a dog, so walking the dog 3 times a day. That's a 10,000 step exercise right
yeah,
there.
yes,
I do some yoga
yeah,
exercises,
yes.
um, which is very good. I feel really good after it. Half an hour a day, that's all I need
It
to.
was excellent.
It has to do also, and maybe I'll make one comment, which kind of speaks to the book that we wrote, Quantum Body. Yoga allows you to synchronize all parts of the body, right? And this synchronization leads to metabolic efficiency. It was a mystery for about 2 centuries why people measured something like which is called allometric scaling laws of physiology. I don't know if if you're familiar with this, or the audience, that means if you go from bacteria all the way to elephants, it turns out that the metabolic demands, basal metabolic rate as it's measured, do not scale linearly with size,
Right.
sublinearly.
Uh-huh.
And actually, the exponent, the power law, is 3/4 exponent. This is for healthy organisms. And why is that? Because that can be explained by efficiencies which are built into the organization of the animal body or the human body when it's healthy, right?
Yeah.
Now, when diseases strike, especially metabolic diseases, which also includes cancer, this efficiency is broken because different organs or tissues are not perfectly coordinated with the rest of the body.
Yeah.
And then you have metabolic inefficiencies, and scaling laws become linear. So that's kind of a scientific explanation why things like yoga meditation can help reintegrate all parts of the body.
Yeah, I mean, tennis is an excellent exercise because you're on court, more than 2 hours, sometimes three, four, and you're
Yes.
you're making a lot of movements. You're sprinting, you're turning. Be careful,
Yes.
though, don't injure yourself.
I'm trying to be as careful as I can, but at the same time, sometimes you really have to run to the ball and forget about safety.
So anyway, I like your paper very much. Very well written. I would
I appreciate that.
recommend
It's an honor.
anyone who reads it, and congratulations on your career. You need some rest. Maybe don't write so many papers. Life is short.
Yes, yes, yes. Do more yoga and tennis.
Yes, enjoy yourself. I think, yeah, and I think people need to enjoy their life. We're very work orientated in the States, but I think when we get to our age, it's a good time to slow down and enjoy ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Okay,
Gajraj.
thank
I
you very
very much
much.
appreciate it.